This morning, I saw something I genuinely did not expect to see displayed this openly. Not hidden, not concealed in the coastal caves and tunnel systems that the IRGC has relied on for 71 days to keep their remaining assets invisible from the satellite platforms that watch this waterway around the clock. 130 fast attack boats sitting in two massive coordinated formations, visible from orbit near Keshem Island and the Rock Islands in the Strait of Hormuz. Sentinel-2 imagery dropped this morning, May 10th, 2026, and it captured everything. Let me be precise about what I mean when I say visible. These boats weren't accidentally spotted. They weren't caught in a gap in their concealment routine. They were formed up in tight, unmistakable tactical patterns that broadcast their presence to every intelligence collection system, every commercial satellite platform, and every open-source analyst who queries the imagery feeds that Sentinel-2 makes available to anyone with the technical capability to access them. The IRGC didn't just move their fleet. They released the coordinates of their own threat position. And at the exact same moment, CENTCOM released its own imagery in response. F-16 Vipers flying active sorties over the Strait of Hormuz. FA-18 Super Hornets on combat air patrol off the decks of the Abraham Lincoln, the George H.W. Bush, and the Gerald R. Ford. The three-carrier strike group architecture that represents the largest concentration of American naval aviation ever assembled in the Persian Gulf. AH-64 Apache attack helicopters operating in the same waters where they already sent the first wave of IRGC boats to the bottom on May 3rd. Two simultaneous image releases, one from Iran showing what it still possesses, one from the United States showing precisely what will answer it. This is not normal military movement. This is a deliberate visual conversation conducted in real time through satellite imagery rather than Pakistani or Qatari diplomatic back channels. Both sides have chosen to speak to each other and to the world in pictures rather than words. And what those pictures are saying, when you understand the full strategic context behind them, is one of the most consequential exchanges of this entire 71-day conflict. Stay with me. Because the surface story here, boats versus carriers, swarm doctrine versus American firepower, is only the beginning. What's happening beneath this morning's imagery is a story about internal fractures, institutional memory, information warfare, and an undefined American threat called Project Freedom Plus that may be the most powerful weapon in the entire theater, precisely because nobody knows what it contains. First, understand what you're actually looking at when you study those Sentinel-2 images, because the instinct is to read 130 boats in formation as a demonstration of Iranian strength. That instinct is only half right. The other half of what those images reveal is something the IRGC almost certainly didn't intend to communicate so clearly. These are the survivors. Before this conflict began 71 days ago, Iran operated more than 160 naval vessels. The conventional surface fleet, frigates, corvettes, the larger surface combatants that could credibly contest American destroyer operations in open water, has been largely destroyed or degraded to the point of operational irrelevance through 71 days of American strike operations, naval engagements, and blockade enforcement. What remains is the Mosquito fleet, the asymmetric capability that the IRGC spent 4 decades building precisely because it recognized, after Operation Praying Mantis in 1988, destroyed half of Iran's conventional navy in a single day, that it could never match American surface power on equal terms. The 130 boats in this morning's imagery are simultaneously Iran's remaining military capability on the water and the visible evidence of everything that capability has replaced. The IRGC is showing us what it has left, because showing it is the only leverage it possesses. Concealment no longer serves the strategic purpose it served when the conventional fleet was intact and the threat was ambiguous. Now the threat needs to be visible to be credible. This is a confession dressed as a threat. And the analytical community watching those images understands both dimensions simultaneously. But I want to be absolutely clear about something before we go any further. Dismissing these boats because of what their existence reveals about Iran's losses would be a serious analytical error. These are real weapons operated by motivated crews under a doctrine that has been specifically engineered for the confined water environment of the Strait of Hormuz, and they deserve the operational respect that honest assessment requires. The fast attack boats in this formation run 60 to 75 feet in length, diesel-powered, capable of 50 to 60 knots in operational conditions. That speed matters enormously in a confined waterway where the geometry of an engagement changes in seconds. They carry 107mm rockets, 12.7mm heavy machine guns, and 23mm autocannons. Some variants carry the C-802 anti-ship missile, a Chinese-origin weapon that skims the sea surface at subsonic speed, carries a 160-kilogram warhead, and has a range of approximately 100 kilometers. The C-802 is a genuine ship killer. It requires genuine defensive response, not dismissal. The doctrine behind these boats, what the IRGC calls swarm tactics, is where the real threat lives. Not a single-direction attack that Aegis combat systems can manage through sequential intercept logic. Multiple formations splitting into simultaneous approach vectors from different compass points, arriving at an American surface combatant from several directions at once, forcing defensive systems to engage threats whose geometry creates interference conditions where addressing one creates a window for another. The doctrine is specifically designed to make American technological superiority work against itself, to turn the sophistication of the defensive architecture into a coordination problem that creates gaps. These boats were never designed to win a conventional naval battle against American destroyers. They were designed to make the cost of defeating them high enough to matter strategically. That's the communication 130 of them in coordinated formation is sending this morning. And it's a communication that deserves to be taken seriously, even while understanding its full context. Now, let me walk you through exactly how the American response to this threat actually works, because understanding the layered architecture of what those 130 boats would face is what gives you the complete picture of this morning's strategic exchange. The response doesn't begin when the boats enter the water. It begins far earlier, in the detection layer that covers the entire strait continuously and feeds every platform in the American network with a composite picture that no individual system could generate independently. High above the operational area, the E-2D Advanced Hawkeye provides the airborne early warning and battle management foundation. Its radar tracks every surface contact from the moment movement begins, generating the continuous track data that assigns specific aircraft and helicopters to specific geographic sectors of the engagement before the boats have closed to weapons range. The E-2D is above the operational horizon, watching everything simultaneously. The boats cannot see it. It can see everything the boats do. F-35s operating in the area carry the APG-81 Active Electronically Scanned Array Radar, a system that tracks dozens of surface targets simultaneously while sharing that targeting data with every other platform in the network through Link 16 without broadcasting the aircraft's own position in a way Iranian systems can detect. The F-35 sees the boats. The boats cannot see the F-35. And everything the F-35 sees flows to the F-16s, the Apaches, the A-10s, and the surface combatants operating in the same integrated network. RQ-4 Global Hawks add the persistent surveillance layer that manned platforms cannot sustain, orbiting for hours, filling gaps when boats attempt to use islands and coastal terrain to break line of sight with surface-based sensors. The boats cannot hide from the Global Hawk by using geography. The Global Hawk is above the geography. When the engagement begins, sector assignment methodology converts this surveillance picture into a coordinated response that prevents the saturation logic of the swarm from functioning as designed. The strait is divided into geographic kill zones. Each sector is assigned to the platform whose weapons loadout and engagement profile make it optimal for the threat density in that area. A boat crossing sector boundaries gets engaged by the platform owning the new sector. No overlap, no gaps, no targets that escape the assignment because two platforms were focused on the same contact. The A-10 Thunderbolt II is the platform that every fast attack boat crew member in those formations near Keshem should be thinking about this morning. The GAU-8 Avenger, 7 barrels, 30 millimeter, depleted uranium penetrators at nearly 4,000 rounds per minute. A fiberglass fast attack boat that absorbs a burst from the GAU-8 does not continue its attack run. The A-10's loiter capability, its tolerance for battle damage, and its sustained rate of fire make it specifically suited for an engagement that lasts longer than the single-pass geometry that higher performance aircraft produce. It was designed for exactly this mission profile. The AH-64 Apache demonstrated its effectiveness on May 3rd in terms that required no analytical interpretation. 6 IRGC fast attack boats went to the bottom in approximately 12 minutes. Hellfire missiles engage at ranges where the boat's own weapons cannot respond. The helmet-mounted targeting system allows the pilot to engage targets in whatever direction the pilot is looking, rather than requiring the aircraft to point at the target, a critical advantage in the angular geometry of fast-moving surface targets in confined strait waters. And then there is the option that addresses the problem before it becomes an engagement at all. Strike the coastal staging infrastructure before the boats disperse into swarm geometry. The GBU-72 5,000-pound bunker-busting penetrator has already been used in this conflict against hardened coastal missile sites. The same weapon applied to the coves, the command nodes, the coordination infrastructure that makes a swarm function as a coherent force rather than a collection of individual boats moving in the same general direction. That option addresses 130 boats at their source rather than in the water. And this morning, the IRGC provided the coordinates. The specific locations near Keshem and the Rock Islands, where those formations are assembled, are now confirmed in public record by the Sentinel-2 imagery. The option to strike those locations before the boats disperse is not theoretical. It is a live planning calculation being run right now against targeting data the IRGC voluntarily provided. But here's where this morning's analysis has to go deeper than boats and platforms and weapons specifications. Because what those satellite images represent is the visible surface of something much more complex happening inside Iran's military and political institutions. And that deeper layer is where the most consequential questions of this moment actually live. The name you need to understand is Brigadier General Mustafa Salami, the older brother of Hussein Salami, the IRGC commander-in-chief killed in Israeli strikes in June 2025. His brother was everywhere. The speeches, the television appearances, the inflammatory public declarations that the IRGC's institutional communication required from someone with command authority. Mustafa is his operational opposite. Almost no media presence, no propaganda role, regular Iranian army, not IRGC by institutional background. A veteran of the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s, currently serving as a senior advisor, bridging the operational gap between Iran's regular armed forces and IRGC joint military operations. The reason this man matters today is that he occupies the precise institutional position at the precise institutional moment where Iran's most consequential internal tension is concentrated. The IRGC's hardline faction controls most of the institution's resources and operational authority. They see continued confrontation as both strategically necessary and ideologically mandatory. Backing down, in their framework, isn't a tactical decision about military sustainability. It's an existential threat to the revolutionary identity that gives the institution its reason for existence. The regular Iranian army carries a different institutional memory. The senior commanders of the Artesh are the generation whose formative military experience is 1988, the moment Ayatollah Khomeini described accepting the ceasefire as drinking poison and accepted it anyway because the operational reality made continuation impossible. They lived through the institutional experience of a military that had to acknowledge what the situation actually required rather than what ideology demanded. They know what that moment feels like from inside an organization that has to face it honestly. Mustafa Salami, with his Iran-Iraq war background and his bridging role between the two institutional cultures, understands both dimensions simultaneously. The operational reality that 130 boats represent and the institutional memory of what happens to Iranian military organizations that fight past the point where the math of continuation makes sense. Whether his advisory access to IRGC command allows that institutional memory to influence the decisions being made this morning is the intelligence question that matters more than any technical specification of the weapons on either side. Inside Iran, parallel to everything happening on the water, a different kind of conflict is being fought. The 71-day internet blackout, the longest imposed by any modern nation-state in recent history, is the information warfare dimension of this conflict that external analysis consistently underweights. Millions of Iranians have been cut off from outside information environments for over 2 months. No access to outside news about what is actually happening in this conflict. No communication with family members abroad. No participation in the digital economy that was slowly developing before February 28th. The IRGC is actively hunting Starlink users, detecting terminal signals, and dispatching teams to locations. Every Iranian attempting to access accurate information about their own country's war is making a personal security calculation about whether truth is worth the risk. And then CNN's reporting documented something that has generated what the coverage describes as widespread public criticism inside Iran: a two-tier internet system. Senior IRGC officers with operational planning requirements still have full connectivity. The regime's administrative class, whose institutional functions require internet access, still has it. The political elite, whose international communications require what the blackout denies to ordinary citizens, still has it. The institution imposing information darkness on its population is exempt from the darkness it is imposing. People cannot see the outside information environment, but they can observe that the two-tier system exists. They can see that the blackout has different rules for different people. That observation, spreading through a population that is simultaneously experiencing food price inflation, medicine shortages, and power outages, while state television broadcasts military victory celebrations, is corrosive to the narrative of national unity that the regime needs this conflict to sustain. State media proclaiming unity between government and people against an imposed war, delivered through a media infrastructure that the government controls, to a population the government has imprisoned in information darkness, while the government itself enjoys the connectivity it denied to the governed, is the propaganda contradiction that the blackout itself creates. The people cannot see the content of what they're being denied, but they can see that they're being denied it. And that visibility is already doing political work that the IRGC cannot fully control. Project Freedom Plus is the undefined American counter to the deterrence display those 130 boats represent. Trump confirmed it publicly. The deliberate ambiguity of plus other things is the most powerful weapon in the American arsenal this morning, not because of what it contains, but because the IRGC cannot model what it contains. The boats in formation near Keshem are a known quantity: 130 fast attack craft with known specifications, known doctrine, known engagement profiles. The IRGC can model that threat against the American defensive architecture, the Apaches, the A-10s, the carrier aviation, the surface combatants, and generate an estimate of the engagement outcome. That estimate is not encouraging for the IRGC, as the May 3rd result demonstrated in terms that required no interpretation. But at least it's modelable. Plus is not modelable. Will it include expanded strikes on coastal infrastructure beyond what Project Freedom originally targeted? Covert operations against IRGC financial networks, intensified cyber operations against the communication systems that coordinate swarm attacks, direct action missions from special operations forces currently on alert, acceleration of the economic warfare through tightened blockade enforcement. The IRGC must prepare for all of it without knowing which elements are actually in the authorization package. That uncertainty is itself a form of deterrence. And it's the specifically American form of deterrence that the IRGC's deterrence display of 130 visible boats cannot neutralize. Because visibility is the answer to a known threat, not an unknown one. So here's the complete picture of May 10th, 2026 in the Strait of Hormuz. 130 fast attack boats sitting in coordinated formation near Keshem, their coordinates publicly confirmed in Sentinel-2 imagery. 3 American carrier strike groups with combined air wings representing over 100 combat aircraft, all already airborne or at immediate readiness. The E-2D Hawkeyes watching everything from above. The F-35 sharing the composite picture through Link 16 to every platform in the network. The A-10s loitering, the Apaches operating, the GBU-72 targeting calculations running against coordinates the IRGC provided voluntarily. Inside Iran, a 71-day information blackout with a 2-tier system that is generating political corrosion the regime cannot fully control. A power struggle between IRGC hardliners committed to continued confrontation and regular Army veterans who remember 1988. Mustafa Salami occupying the institutional bridge between those two cultures at the moment when the bridge matters most. Intelligence penetration that has already reached into VIP protection units whose function is to prevent exactly that kind of access. And Project Freedom Plus, the undefined, unmodelable expansion of American operational scope that sits as an unknown variable in every IRGC planning calculation happening this morning. The boats showed Iran's last significant card on the water. CENTCOM showed what answers it. The visual conversation is complete. Both sides have communicated their positions through imagery rather than through diplomats. What comes next depends on a decision being made right now in those formations near Keshem and in the operational planning rooms bridging Mustafa Salami's 2 institutional worlds. Whether the deterrence display achieves its purpose, buys negotiating space, communicates costs, provides the off-ramp that the institutional faction that remembers drinking poison is trying to construct, or whether the hardline calculation holds and the boats in those formations test what 3 carrier strike groups and an undefined plus actually mean in operational terms. The prayer beads are turning in those cockpits. The platforms are already airborne. The coordinates are already in the targeting systems. The only thing not yet defined is what happens next. Tell me in the comments, do you read the formation display as genuine deterrence aimed at buying negotiating space, or as the last performance of an institution that has already decided to escalate regardless of the cost? I want your read on what Mustafa Salami's institutional influence actually means for the decision being made right now. Subscribe and turn on notifications. This is moving in real time, and we are going to be here with the complete picture as it develops. Full audio available on Spotify. Watch the next video queued up right now. The clock is running in the Strait of Hormuz.